Hi, this is Bo Esther for Pops Productions. I'm also a partner and shareholder in one of the first podcasting stations in the United States. When I came to the company in Studio City, California in 2006, they had 3 studios all running Pro Tools 7 at the time. In each studio, we had one engineer working with one podcaster for 1 hour. The engineer would do some light editing and also edit the 1 hour podcast into 4 segments, add ads into the 3 pauses, and add an intro and an outro. Then he had to do a mix down, and there was the real time killer because Pro Tools at the time had to do everything in real time. So as you can see, a 1 hour podcast would take 1 hour to do a mix down. So within the first couple of weeks there, I shifted the station around to using MOTU Digital Performer because Digital Performer at the time was capable of doing offline bouncing, which cut down our production time to about 3-4 minutes. So what I'm going to show you here today is in my studio and production company, we still do some podcasting with a few podcasters that we have been working with for a long time. So they send us their podcast file. We add intro, maybe insert whatever they want. We do some editing, add an outro, and make the MP3 file, add metadata, and then upload it to their whatever platform the individual podcaster might be using. So in this case, this is my DP template. So let's look at this particular podcast. First, I have one track where I have the outro sitting out here. And what's important here, I have finished the outro with effects and everything. So where this soundbite ends is exactly the very end of my podcast, where the gain is at 0. And that's important in terms of workflow. And I'll get back to that later in this video. We have the intro. I have an ad that's sitting here. We have a bumper sitting here coming right after the ad. There's just a little guitar strum before we'll go into where the podcast normally goes. In this case today, we will not be using the ads, and therefore we won't be using the bumper either. So I'll just choose the mute tool. Just click on these two, so now they won't sound. So should we forget to turn the tracks off, mute the tracks, then we have a double safety there. Okay, so let's go find the podcast file. And today, the podcaster sent this file. I'll drag it into my podcast main track. And we can see today the podcaster actually took his recording gear out to a person to do an interview. He brought 2 microphones, which is great. So he sent us a stereo file with him on the right channel and the interviewee on the left channel. So the first thing we will do in DP is split this stereo file into 2 mono files so we can work with them individually. So we'll go to the soundbites window here, select the soundbite, right click on it, click convert audio file, and we will leave the sample rate where it's at. The interleave format, which is the interesting thing here, is we have to click on use one file for each channel, non-interleaved. So we'll go ahead here and click OK. And we will see DP is now starting to produce the files here. DP is now done. So let me bring in the project folder here and let's look in audio files. So we have the interview file there, and here we have the 2 files. So we will go here and we need to change the names. So we'll simply call this interview A, and this one we will call interview B. Then we'll take these 2 files, drag them into DP, move the folder, and there we have the 2 files here. So now we can go ahead and take this file and just delete it. We'll bring these two files up here. Now we'll zoom in at the beginning, and I'll place the files where they should be. They'll be about here. This is where the intro ends, so let's just play this.
Let's check it out. Greetings
and that sounds fine to me. Nice tempo, get nice flow there. And we hear this is the interviewer, as we expected from seeing this is the first place where there's any speak. So this one will simply, so we'll take the top and just, it looks like it's dead air up there. So let's just start listening to this to see how this sounds.
Greetings and welcome to TED in Your Head podcast number 9.
Oh, there's some plosives right there. Let's go to the mixing board. Let's just look at, on my template, I'm using Fabfilter Pro-Q2 as an equalizer because on the intro music I got, there was some serious 60 hertz hum, so I'm just taking that out with a deep filter. And Fabfilter is excellent for that. On my main podcast channel, I also added the MW limiter. On my master bus, I'm using the MW leveler. I have two effects channels if I need to add some ambience or some reverb to the sound to blend it, and I'm using two Valhalla DSP effects for that. Vintage verb here, and the other one is Übermod. Now let's move Pro-Q2 and the limiter over to our two podcast channels. We can take it out of automation mode. Now we heard the plosive. The first thing I want to do is look at Pro-Q2, and that is looking at the 60 hertz removal. So let's get rid of that. Let's delete that and then add a low cut, and we'll do a fairly steep low cut. We'll take it around here, 50 hertz. 50 hertz, that's down there. So let's move it up a little bit here to about 75. There we go. So we'll just leave it there. So let's hear how he sounds now.
Greetings and welcome to TED in Your Head podcast.
We still have a plosive there as I expected, because if I took all this low end out, he would have no body whatsoever in his speak. So with DP, I will add the wonderful dynamic equalizer. Let's put this into floating so it'll stay on top. Let's go back to the sequence. Let's zoom in. Right around there, we see the plosive where it is. We'll select this. We'll set selection to bounds and select the cycle. So move in here.
Head podcast number 9. Head podcast number.
It'll just keep cycling there, and then I'll start looking at what I can do with the dynamic EQ.
Number 9. Head podcast number 9.
So
Head podcast number 9.
The first is a low shelf, so I won't use that because I want a bell curve right here. So
Head podcast.
So I'll take the second band here, move it down, and we can see
Head podcast.
There about here is where the plosive comes out down. So we will basically just take the EQ down a little bit. But at the same time, we will also work with the compressor here.
Number 9. Head podcast.
We can
number
see
9.
here.
Head podcast number 9. Head pod.
So you see here how much the plosive gives here in dB. So we'll take the beam here and take it down.
Podcast number 9. Head 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 podcast podcast number 9. Head podcast number.
So it's more tolerable. It's still not great. Let's look at the cue here.
Number 9. Head podcast 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 number 9. Head podcast.
So you see, I can't get rid of the plosive, of course, but I can mitigate it. And this is a great tool to do exactly that, because I don't want to take the low end out to take out the body of his voice. I just want to control that specific plosive. And that's where the dynamic EQ is really good. Let's take it out of floating because I don't need it anymore. So now we can take it out of cycle. And let's just do a little fade in here in the beginning.
Number 19. This is the 4th in my interview series. And today I'm having a conversation with Tarni Falloon. Tarni Falloon is a
So let's go up here to where she comes in.
Oftentimes overactive minds. Welcome, Tarni. Wonderful to have you.
Thank you, Ted.
So this is where she speaks the first time. So let's take this out, just delete. Let's sweeten the edges. We can take this out here so we don't have too much room noise. You can hear here. Let's listen to this where we keep her in.
To have you.
Thank you, Ted. Lovely to be with you again.
Okay, so just a few questions.
You can hear there's some room tone there. So if we take this out, you heard the room tone right there. So let's hear.
Again.
Okay, so just a few questions.
So it's way more focused if we take that out. You could try to take it out with a gate, but you'll see the levels in the recording are so varied that a gate would be... I would be scared to use a gate simply because I would be afraid of missing something, because she seems to be speaking very softly, and all of a sudden you can see there's a lot of dynamics going on in her voice. So let's just go up here. He talks, and then she starts to talk.
Do as a transformational mentor.
Well, as a transformational mentor.
Now you see, there's quite a bit of a pause there, and we want to tighten it up. So what I'll do is I'll select the I-beam tool. And I'm actually using my cell phone and touch OSC to do some of these things, because that's way easier for me than to use the keyboard, so I can keep my hands where I need them. So I'll go in one of the tracks, hold down the command key so I can select without the grid and say this is what I want to take out. And now we have to look at... That's why I have my commands down here. I selected this. Then a lifesaver of a command here is grow selection to all tracks. And I have a serious key command here because I have set up a button on my iPhone with Touch OSC, and I'll simply just click it. And there we go. We have everything. And then we have Command J, and everything snaps together. We took out what we were looking at here. Now we did something to our commercial here, so we have to be careful where we are doing this, because we are doing an edit on every tracks. Now it doesn't matter. Let's actually take out the commercial because we're not going to use it anyhow. So let's go on further.
Well, as a transformational mentor, and it's an interesting word because I've sort of made it up, but what I do is let's edit that actually, edit. So what I do is a transformation.
Okay, so there's actually an edit to be made here. From here, let's make sure we are editing.
Let's edit that actually, edit. So what I do is a
Yeah, so again, with the I-beam selected, it's important to listen to what we are taking out in the dialogue, so we're sure that we're doing the right edits.
Well, as a transformational mentor, and it's an interesting word because I've sort of...
And it seems right.
So what I do is
Yeah, that is where it is. So I select this with the I-beam tool.
Transformational... Well, as a transformation...
And hit our grow selections all. Command J, and everything moves up.
So what I do as a transformational mentor is take people from a really distressed place, a place where they're in pain or they've got body symptoms that are really causing a lot of...
So she has a lip thing there that doesn't sound that good, and we also have the R.
distress.
So let's take that lip out. Grow selection to all tracks. Command J, and there we go.
Got body symptoms that are really causing a lot.
Actually, let's take the arm out as well. So we're selecting it. Grow selection to all tracks. Command J.
Symptoms that are really causing a lot of body symptoms that are really causing a lot of...
So there's a little R here. So we can work on that if we want to take that out as well. But you see how I'm doing that, and everything is still in sync. And once all this is cut into pieces, then we can go back to select the arrow tool and remove some of the interviewer's voice here. There might be a or something, or an
Help shift that. So
that's just a noise, so we'll just continue to take that out. There's some pause in here as well. Let's look at that.
Stuck, and usually, and my focus is what's happening in the body.
So she's stumbling a little bit.
Stuck, and usually, and my focus is what's happening in the.
So let's first zoom in a little bit and start from the end.
In the body, what's happening in the body.
So what's happening?
This is what's happening in the body.
So that's what we want to take out. Hit our command for grow selections to all. We have to select the I-beam tool. Grow selection to all. Hit command J. Now let's listen.
And usually, and my focus is what's happening in the body. And usually, and my focus is what's happening.
And my focus is.
My focus is this.
Let's go further in here.
My focus is this.
So let's go back to the I-beam tool.
This.
Grow selection to all. Command J.
My focus is what's.
My focus is.
My focus is.
I-beam tool. Grow to all. Let's cut it all.
My
Command
focus
J.
is what. My focus is what's happening.
So she's stumbling a little bit, but that's how she speaks.
And usually, and my focus is what's happening in the body, what's happening at the body level, and then how to transfer.
Okay. So let's zoom out a little bit here. And again, we can just click on these sounds of the interviewer and get them out. And so we will continue until we have edited the whole podcast. So let's roll down to the end of the podcast. Done all the editing. Here's my outro. Let's move it over a little bit. We just want to sweeten the ending a little bit. Let's listen to how it sounds.
And thank you, Ted. Appreciate it.
Love and blessings to you, Tiny. Thanks so much.
Okay.
I don't like that. Okay, that sounds a little. Let's take her out there. And
Thanks to you, Tiny. Thanks so much.
And then we just want to go really tight in on this part there.
Thanks so much.
Okay, we can delete the rest. And we can zoom out. Take the outro, move it in here. There's some slight music being faded in, so let's see how it works here.
Thank you, Ted. Appreciate it.
Love and blessings to you, Tiny. Thanks so much.
A little too late. Let's move it over a little tad.
Get it.
Love and blessings to you, Tiny. Thanks so much. Thanks for listening.
There we go. So I think this is done. So the only thing we need to do now is doing a bounce. And what we will do is, which is why I have the selection information pane right here, we could also do it from up here. I'll just select a little bit. Go selection here to select to chunk bounds. And you see it selects everything from the very beginning to the end of the last soundbite, which is why it was important for me to have these outros going to 0 dB gain, so we have no clicks at the very end of the podcast when we are doing our bounds. So let's check everything is selected from the very beginning. There we go. And we can select bounce to disk. And this will be episode 19. We do a stereo bounce. And the bounce is done. And we imported the file to the DP project, just so I have a visual that we have bounced everything. Okay. To make the MP3 file, I'm using SoundGrinder from Monkey Tools. The reason why I'm doing that is because I can simply have some presets made up for the clients. So in this case, we're working for Ted Moreno podcast. And where the preset comes in, it remembers MP3, it remembers the lame setting, the constant bit rate, that the bit rate is 128. But it also remembers what metadata to put into the file. And let's look at the Id3 tags. So there's the cover or the show title, and we can actually have, let me show you here, we can actually have pictures embedded as well. And as you can see, we can have file icon, we can have cover front, cover back, leaflet page, other media, we can have pictures of the lead artist, the artist conductor, and so on and so forth, so that we can actually embed a lot of images into the MP3 file as well as the cover here. And we are storing this as a PNG. It's a 600 by 600 pixel format, and that is remembered in my preset. As you can see, there's a lot of MP3 tags we can add here, and it's all set up, it's all remembered. The only thing that I have to change every single time is, of course, the title of the file itself, that this will be episode 19. And it will be, I'll add Tammy Floon interview. Now it's changed to non-selected because I changed it so here I could either update the preset or I could create a new preset. I could also create a droplet, not even have to open SoundGrinder, but just have a little applet on my desktop. However, of course, if I need to change something here like just the title, then I have to go in here, which is why we're doing that. So we will go to our projects folder, get our bounces, take our bounces, add the bounces, just, yeah, it's playing, so we'll hit convert. So this is how we edit podcast in MOTU Digital Performer. If you like what you see, subscribe to my YouTube Send me questions. I'll look at them, and hopefully we can have a conversation about this exciting technology. Thank you.